Hi, everyone. I'm Anita Sharma. Welcome to Headlines on A News. Ukraine faces the ire of the United States, with the Trump administration still demanding that President Vladimir Zelensky arrange for a payback with mineral rights worth about $500 billion U.S. U.S. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz says Zelensky must take a, quote, hard look and sign that deal. Zelensky says he's willing to work something out, but wants to see some changes in that deal. He's also looking for some new allies. Could China play a role, perhaps as a peacemaker? Let's discuss this with my three guests. Joining us is Luba Shipovich from Dignitas, which provides disaster relief to Ukraine, as well as journalist and political analyst Nikola Mikovic, and Sergei Markov, director of the Russian Institute of Political Studies and a former member of Russian Parliament. Nikola, let's start with you. What are your thoughts on this minerals deal the United States is pushing Ukraine for now?
It's a bad deal for Ukraine, at least from the Serbian perspective, because here our government is trying to reach a similar deal with the Australian-British company called Rio Tinto, and Serbia would get only 3% of the revenue. So Ukraine, from that perspective, is in a much better position because it would get 50%, remaining 50% would go to the United States. And also from the U.S. perspective, it perfectly makes sense what Trump expects from Ukraine. But as we know, Zelensky is not willing to sign such a deal unless he gets firm guarantees that the U.S. will provide security guarantees to Ukraine, which I don't think will happen, because it's quite obvious that the U.S. tries to stay out of this conflict and is abandoning Zelensky, not Ukraine necessarily, but Zelensky. And I think that's what Trump and Putin have in common. I think they both want to get rid of the Ukrainian president. Although I'm not sure it's a good strategy, because even if Ukraine holds the elections, there is no guarantee that Zelensky will not be re-elected. Mm-hmm. And even if he gets replaced by someone else, like Zaluzhny or someone else, whoever comes to power in Ukraine will continue pursuing more or less the same policy and is unlikely to sign any deal that would violate the Ukrainian constitution. And I don't see any political figure in Ukraine willing to recognize Russia's annexation of those 5 Ukrainian regions. So I don't think that Zelensky is in a good position, because, as I said, he's pressured by both Moscow and the United States. But on the other hand, Trump will definitely have a hard time finding the right person in Kiev to sign a deal that he expects Ukraine to reach with Moscow.
Yeah, Zelensky certainly doesn't look to be in a good position at all. Sergei, what do you think of this $500 billion deal? It's caught a lot of folks, they're rather blindsided by this request, if you will, or demand perhaps, from the United States. Your thoughts, sir?
We see with some of those laugh in this discussion. For the few reasons. Why? Because Trump and Zelensky didn't decide the sense of the deal. Zelensky ready to give this half of the $1 trillion for mineral resources. And Zelensky want to get what we call security guarantee of the Ukraine, but in fact security guarantee of his regime. But Donald Trump wants to sell not security guarantee. He wants to sell previous money, which United States already gave to the Ukrainian army. It means $350 billion, which United States already spent to Ukrainian war. So they have a different point what Ukraine should get to the replace of the to the exchange of this half of the million mineral resources. That's first. Secondly, Ukraine has no such of the amount of mineral resources because it's first of all very much overestimated, and secondly, a big part of them stay in Donbass. and Russia took control of the 20% of the Ukrainian territory. But if we're talking about mineral resources, Russia took control over the 50% of the Ukrainian mineral resources. So Zelensky wants to sell to Donald Trump those minerals resources, which now became part of the Russia.
Very interesting. So you're saying basically they are both operating with different bargaining chips on the table, and that there is not $500 billion worth of resources up for grabs here. Is that right, Sergey?
Exactly. What Ukraine have, in fact, it's not mineral resources. We're talking about economy. It's first of all soil for agriculture, which is Ukraine is very good, and also some of the port infrastructure for the future economic development. It's what Zelensky wants to bargain.
Okay, Luba, thank you for your patience. I want to bring you in here. What are your thoughts on this whole back and forth, if you will, with respect to this minerals deal that the U.S. is now demanding of Zelensky and Ukraine?
First of all, I want to clarify on numbers.
Sure.
Numbers are publicly available on State Department website, and it clearly says that Ukraine got a little bit less than $50 billion in weapons and direct help. The rest was spent by U.S. administration in the United States by covering salaries of administrations that was working on Ukraine, on monitoring missions and everything. So I don't think Ukraine is anyhow responsible for spending by Democratic administration inside U.S. And on the other hand, the money that was spent directly for Ukraine and or weapons that were received by Ukraine, there is no way to get payback because they were sent to Ukraine as grants, as a free gifts. The same what happened when Ukraine gave up our nuclear weapons. Like we are not requesting countries to pay us I believe it was $700 billion of nuclear weapons. We are not asking countries that, especially Russia, who received 90% of these weapons, to pay us back. So it was gave as a free gift to Russia as a part of Budapest Memorandum. Same with all this support that United States sent to Ukraine during last 11 years. It was part of a deal between United States and Ukraine to send it free of charge. As we know, there was a law on land lease, which Ukraine never used. It's still available to use land lease, but Ukraine never started to use this deal.
Very interesting. So, Sergey, we have a discrepancy in the bargaining chips apparently on the table for the deal. And as Luba is pointing out, looks like there's also a huge discrepancy with respect to how much money was spent for Ukraine. Your thoughts on that?
How much money United States spent for Ukraine? President of United States talking that it probably 350 billions. Zelensky told that it's something about $100 billion. Some of the American think tanks talking that it's probably something close to the 200 billions. We believe that if they have so big chaos about figures, it means that in such chaos, a lot of money has been stolen, and we believe that this stolen money have been divided between previous United States administration led by Biden, and we know that Hunter Biden and Joe Biden, they're very corrupted people and stolen a lot of money, and also it have been stolen by Vladimir Zelensky team. And I believe that Vladimir Zelensky now billionaire because he's stolen a lot of American money. We think it's very good that Americans and Ukrainians stolen American money to Ukraine because it's diminished military capacity of Ukrainian army. So all these corruptioners now discussing with each other, and we're looking at this discussion of corruptioner with a lot of love.
Nicola, so allegedly some corruption at play here from the side of the U.S. with respect for money that was bound for Ukraine. How do you reconcile this? Because it looks like the U.S. is really digging in its feet, wanting action on the mineral rights front. You have Luba with some numbers, you have Sergey with some numbers. How is this all going to play out? You can only imagine what it's like at the actual bargaining table, right?
Well, that's something Russia and Ukraine have in common, because their leadership of both countries seems to be extremely corrupt. We know that Sergei Shoigu was involved in various corruption schemes. And the United States invested a lot in Ukraine, which is why I don't think it is willing to completely abandon that country. And even if that happens, which in my opinion is extremely unlikely, there's still the European Union, there are still other countries that are willing to continue to support Ukraine as long as it takes, which is why I don't think it will be possible for Moscow and Kiev to end this war in the near future. They might sign a ceasefire deal, and I agree with Kirill Budanov, who yesterday said that ceasefire is quite possible this year. I agree with that, although I don't think that Russia and Ukraine will sign a peace treaty, because it's easy to start a war, but it's very difficult to end it. Russia did not achieve any of its goals in this war, and Ukraine also did not achieve its major goal, which is to recapture territory that's under Russian control. So I think hostilities will go on one way or another. There might be some kind of a break, a ceasefire, but in the future, I'm afraid we will have another war because the conflict has not been resolved.
Wow. Luba, it's certainly been a whirlwind with meetings in Munich, Paris, of course, Riyadh, which hosted U.S. and Russian officials, while Europe and Ukraine were essentially pushed aside. Does Ukraine have an alternative, or does it just have to sit and wait to see how all this plays out, watching from the sidelines, essentially?
First, I want to comment on what Sergey and Nicholas told.
Please.
I think we should stop using corruption card because Ukraine has democratically elected president, unlike Russia, for example, and still, even now, the trust rate to the current president is more than 50%. So I don't think we should play corruption card, and specifically with U.S. help, Ukrainian military is using logistic IT system provided by Americans called LogFast, and every piece of military help is marked with QR code, and you can track the entire way of this piece was transferred from United States, from their military bases to Ukraine military bases, where it's used. So it's everything is pretty clear. There were a few audit done by U.S. administration in Ukraine, and there was no provement of every single stole piece from United States support that was provided to Ukrainian military.
Sergey, what do you think about that?
She told a lot. So I think the main problem is the character of Ukrainian regime. From our point of view, this regime not only not democratic, it's ultra non-democratic. It's ultra repressive with neo-Nazi characteristic, use terror almost openly. And the problem is that Europe and United States deep state created this regime, and now they don't even want to recognize that so bad thing was made for Ukraine. It's the main problems for the peace solution. And about peace break, forget about this. There will be no peace break because we know on the 100% that peace break from Western side will be used as Minsk I and Minsk II agreement only for the recovering of Ukrainian army and for the full militarization of this Ukrainian army, giving more weaponry to it, and for the full Nazification of the domestic situation, political system in Ukraine. So no peace break, only real peace, meaning resolving of the main problem, Ukrainian regime. Ukrainian regime should stop political repression. It's only security guarantee for Ukraine. Moving back to democracy. Ukraine been absolutely insecure situation between 1991 and 2014, when Ukraine was democratic country. Okay, let's move Ukraine back to democracy as Ukraine been before 2014. It's main solution. It's what Russia suggested.
Luba.
It's actually funny that just a few minutes ago, Sergei recognized that Russia was invaded Ukraine and controlled 20% of our territory. So Russia invaded independent country, and they're calling independent country non-democratic when they invaded the country. And like you clearly say that you controlling our mineral resources, our territory, and just 2 days ago, Russia attacked children hospital in Odessa, which is clearly non-military target. So Russia is targeting, hitting our civilian objects, killing civilian people, and calling our country Nazis. So, I think it's clear for everyone who can analyze information and compare facts that if one country invading another country, it doesn't make sense to call the victim Nazis or aggressor or anything.
Nikola, do you think a resolution can be achieved? We're hearing from Luba, we're hearing from Sergei. I know you have your thoughts on this. When you're at the bargaining table, and it's such a critical issue being discussed right now, and big numbers also present here, how in fact are they going to be able to reconcile this, or will they even be able to?
I think in the long term, this war will end when one of the two involved parties agrees to sign an unconditional surrender. That's how conflicts like this usually end. But what Mr. Markov is saying is very interesting, because he's saying that Russia does not want to negotiate with Zelensky because he's an illegitimate leader. But then we remember that Putin initially invaded Ukraine aiming to overthrow Zelensky, and then he on the record promised to his Israeli partners that he does not plan to kill the Ukrainian president. It looks like from the Russian perspective, he was a legitimate leader back then when Russia invaded Ukraine, and the Kremlin did not want to kill him, wanted to negotiate with him, but not anymore. So he suddenly became illegitimate because his term in office allegedly expired. As I said, even if they find a new figure to negotiate with, I don't think they will manage to find a common language with that figure, because, as I said, nobody in Ukraine is ever going to recognize Russia's annexation of those 5 regions. So the war will definitely go on. And as I said, there will be no peace deal anytime soon. I still think that they will sign a ceasefire agreement, because Putin has a history of doing that. Minsk I, Minsk II arrangements. Also in Syria, he signed a de facto ceasefire agreement. He forced Assad to do that with Turkish-backed rebels in Syria, and as a result, he was overthrown. I understand what Mr. Markov is saying, but I simply cannot imagine Putin continuing fighting if he's pressured by his Western partners. And it's quite obvious that Trump is pressuring him to end this war.
Okay, guys, we're gonna do some rapid fire here. We have about 2 minutes to go. Sergey, you got 30 seconds. I wanted to talk quickly about China. Could China play a role here? Can you surmise that in about 30 seconds?
Role for China. I would say a joke on this few seconds. When Donald Trump have 1 hour discussion with a Ukrainian leader, those Americans who support Ukrainian leaders as our participants now, he immediately understood that Ukraine side is lying in every word, and they are wrong, they are responsible for this war. And he, after listening to Ukrainian leaders, he decided that he should go to the Putin immediately.
Quick thoughts on China.
Yeah, I don't think that China could be moderator between Ukraine and Russia. So I believe countries like United States and Turkey could play this role. And specifically with the new administration in the United States and President Trump, who started to speak to Mr. Putin. So we believe that he could some kind pushed him to peace agreement, unlike ceasefire agreement, as Nicholas mentioned, that Putin never keeps word and always start fire after new and new ceasefire deals.
Okay, and final word to you, Nicola. China, there's some talk that maybe it could play a peacemaker role. Maybe it could interject here. Quick final word.
I think China can play an important role in a post-war Ukraine and the reconstruction of the country, but only if it gets the green light from the United States and the West in general, because I think that most parts of Ukraine will be in Western geopolitical orbit after the war. So they will have to give Beijing the green light to do some serious business in the country.
Okay, this was a great chat, folks. Thank you so much for joining us. Nikola Mikovic, Sergey Markov, Luba Shipovich, thank you again. I'm Anita Sharma. Viewers, thanks for joining us and watching Headlines on A News.